All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Family Movie Time Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff M. Giordano. Very excited to talk about Cinderella from 1997. I'll give a short introduction to myself. I started the podcast. I've been making documentaries specifically for about 20 years. I've worked in special education and public schools for almost 15 years on both the East Coast, West Coast, the US. I've also worked as a film curator for public libraries, performing arts venues, film festivals. I currently curate a community film series in San Francisco at the Clarion Performing Arts Center. And if you live in the Bay Area, check it out. The next screening is May 11th and then May 25th. And without further ado, I have two guests. I'm very excited, very grateful, very thankful to have with me tonight. And Natalie, we'll go with you first, and then Stephen. I'll let you both introduce yourselves.
Sure. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Natalie, and I am an artist. I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and graduated in May 2023. And even though I primarily did painting there, and I'm still a painter, and I have a part-time job at the De Young Museum as well in San Francisco. But even though my focus was painting, I still took a few animation classes or a few film classes at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and was also in a movie club, which it was a movie club that met around once a week or every other week, and me and Steven would talk about movies at that club. And yeah, I think that's all for me.
Great. Hi, I'm Steven. I also graduated from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago with Natalie. We were great friends and classmates. I While I was there, I took classes in their what they call the Visual and Critical Studies department, which is like the equivalent of cultural studies. I took some film classes, which entails production and theory. And then I took writing classes, and I primarily did poetry, even though I'm not that much of a poet. And my interests with film are um, depictions of movement slash dance on screen, and how film can perhaps transcend language, maybe. Um, I had this project where I watched films with my mom. We watched, what's that Charlie Chaplin movie, A Modern Times or something, to see whether or not slapstick could transcend the English language and film holding space. So yeah, that's me.
Cool. Very interesting things you both done, and I'm really grateful to have you on this episode. Um, so we'll get right into it. Cinderella, 1997. Um, you both said you had watched the film recently. Did you ever see it years ago before watching it this week?
Nope.
No, I hadn't. And I even think, well, the movie was made before I was born. So, um, not well, I learned that it was a movie for television for ABC. That's right, Jeff. And so, I wasn't able to watch it like when it came out, when it was a hit coming out. And I actually didn't even know the singer Brandy, but since watching the movie, Brandy plays Cinderella, and I was listening to more of her songs, and it seems pretty like 90s, um early 2000s, which I think was just slightly before my time.
Yeah, I was familiar with Brandy as a singer, but not really haven't listened to her discography. Nor have I heard of this movie slash whatever it is, the musical. Um, so it was my first time just like getting into it. We saw it, Natalie and I saw it. Was it like 2 days ago or yesterday? 2 days
I
ago.
think yeah,
Yeah.
it was two nights ago. We saw it together.
Awesome. Yeah, it from my research, it was not actually available on Disney Plus until about 2021. So
Wow.
not that long ago. And just to be super specific, this is the 1997 version starring Whitney Houston, Brandy Norwood, Whoopi Goldberg, Bernadette Peters, Jason Alexander, Victor Garber, Leanne Cox, Natalie Desselle, and Paulo Montalban as the prince. Um, I just saw it probably like earlier this year doing research for the podcast, and I was honestly never a fan of the animated version. Like I respect it, but I'm probably more of like a Snow White or Peter Pan as far as the animated Disney movies. This one I've had more fun watching it, and I did enjoy the diversity quite a bit with the casting and the songs, the colors, some of the special effects. Um, I thought it was interesting how Whitney Houston, she's like one of the producers on the movie, and she also originally was going to be Cinderella, but by the time the movie actually got off the ground and like in production, she decided to let Brandy be Cinderella and Whitney would be the fairy godmother. So I also want to mention there's a version of Cinderella from 1978, also a musical television movie. Um, it has mostly an African American cast, and it's an urbanized retelling of Cinderella that takes place in Harlem. So that one is like very kind of obscure, but I also enjoyed, the interpretation of the story with that version as well. And there is a Turkish version that I came across from 1971, and also a Hindi language 1975 Indian children's fantasy version of the film. Um, so yeah, those were two in the set or three in the 70s that I thought were like very interesting renditions of the story. Um, so back to the 1997 version. Um, I know you both took some notes. Do you want to share some things that stood out for you, whether it was scenes or moments? I'll let you speak upon that.
Steven, do you want to go first? Or
I
should
feel I think you should go first, Natalie.
I? Well, I guess when it first came on and I knew nothing about this movie, I was really glad that you picked the movie for the podcast because it exposed me to something new that I probably wouldn't have
Hmm.
went out of my way to see. The first thing that struck me, knowing nothing about it, was of course the um, like race blind casting. Um, and I thought, I mean, because I feel like something that's really topical right now with like the new Little Mermaid, and also the new Rapunzel, which is a future Disney movie, is like people of color coming into play, like the animated characters that were originally like white. and how that's really topical and controversial. And I was like, hey, Disney has been doing this since the 90s. Like this isn't a new thing. And I really was curious how it was received back then, even though I did some very light research and it seemed to have been well received. Like it got millions of viewers. It was like I mean, again, light research, but it kind of led the way for like TV movie musicals and seemed to be well received. So yeah, I think like right off the bat in like the first scene, that's one thing that stood out to me. And I was like, oh, it's a black Cinderella. That's cool. That's great for representation. And then the Asian prince came out, and I was like, I understand. I understand. I'm really happy that black children or black people growing up, or anyone watching the movie could see themselves in Cinderella. I could recognize that, but then it hits you personally when it's like cute Asian prince. Like I'm all for this. And I don't know when it like directly is you see like someone that's has an identity that you resonate with, that I feel like again it's topical right now. A lot more Asians are being cast, but like an Asian prince, that was fun to see. I like that. That put a smile on my face.
Oh yeah, I remember when the Asian prince
Oh
came. I mean,
yeah.
because like looking at the cover that, oh, Cinderella is black in this adaptation, this version. Um, and then the prince comes out of nowhere and we're like Natalie and I both looked at each other and we were like, oh, we were sort of speechless. We were like, oh, did not expect that. That, usually Asian people aren't represented, and especially Asian men in um positions of power. So yeah, I thought that was just interesting, and I had that visceral reaction encountering this. And I think Natalie brings up good points that sort of my critiques with the movie is about um the casting choices in relation to its diegesis. I think that yeah, and we can sort of be more conversation about it because I didn't really rehearse anything, but um, I for sure had a visceral reaction, and then I was tuned to race as like a theme in the movie. Though I feel like if I was a kid watching it, I would have a totally different viewing practice. Um, but definitely, yeah, the Prince.
How did you feel as far as the interpretation, with it being like a Rodgers and Hammerstein, you know, for the music? I think, in terms of the overall like story, if you compare it to the animated film, how did you feel about the choices they made with the story?
Okay, well, do you want to go, Natalie,
No,
or
you go, you go. If you have something to say.
well, I actually haven't seen. Well, I have seen the Cinderella one, but not in a while, and my memory is kind of foggy these days. But to my from what I can remember, I thought it was like an okay movie, and I thought that the songs were pretty cool. Um, to be honest, I thought it was like an okay movie, and that's sort of my general simplified reaction. Um, I thought that there were definitely moments where it was really fun, and then some that were sort of a little bit more mediocre. I think the story was like in terms of the songwriting and the lyricism, I thought that it could have been maybe a little deeper, maybe a little bit more nuanced. And I know that Natalie and I shared some um, agreement about, especially when Cinderella meets the prince during the ball, and they're out in like sort of their little balcony section, and they were sort of asking each other, do I really like this person? And we thought it was kind of wild how much it delved into the concept of love, or their deep affection for someone who they had just met that quickly. And I feel like, in my recollection, that the kind of whimsy that makes Cinderella, the animated version, work as a fantasy, like the way, like uh just like the way they've edited it to be more concise, I think created the fantasy, whereas in this adaptation it felt like a little bit too much of nothing, that made it feel just a little bit too like overly sentimental, too like schmaltzy, and therefore made it not as fantastical, but more um yeah, just superficial. But I don't know, what do you think about that scene, Natalie? I know you had strong opinions or feelings.
I mean, I do agree that in an animated movie, you can suspend your disbelief a lot more. You know, uh, it is more fantastical. Um, yes, going just watching it as it is, um, it wasn't like my cup of tea, or but I just was very aware of like audience when watching this movie, and just aware that I very most likely was not the target audience for this. And again, I went in knowing nothing about it, uh and so I wasn't surprised to find that it was made for TV, and like a family primetime special. So I mean, but like I could tell, like even watching this, I'm like, okay, like these jokes aren't supposed to hit for me. I'm like adult. I'm like a art student type. Like, I watch movies for me pretty critically, and like I'm an adult. Um, but I don't know. I think that for what it was intending to do, it did it well. I was like, the costumes, the makeup were very fantastical. I read that it had a $12 million budget, which was a lot for a TV movie, but I still like the artistry of, you could see that they kind of maybe cut some corners and did like a painted background set instead of like filming in the woods or constructing a huge castle. It was painted. But I really like that artistry and working with what you have. Again, it was still quite a big budget for a TV movie, but I don't know. I like the animated movies, especially old Disney movies, because you just have an appreciation for, these are, I don't know if the original Cinderella was, but I know like Snow White, it's like hand drawn, frame by frame. And that's like painted, backgrounds painted. As a painter, I know how difficult that is. And it's amazing that you can get a feature length like this. And I think this version incorporated some of that artistry in the original by having those painted backgrounds, really like um fantastical costumes, especially the stepsisters. That was very camp. I like that. Um, but yeah, that's about it.
In terms of like contemporary family friendly movies, one of the things with doing this podcast is I've tried to like think about violence, and when you look at family friendly movies today, if they're live action, is there violence, or how is the violence depicted? And also, like, is there a moral to the story, or is the moral more ambiguous? Uh, we could go with Steven next. Do you have any thoughts on that as far as like films that are, say, G to PG-13 rating these days that are like live action, family friendly?
Do you mean like my thoughts on show like younger audiences viewing or recommendations? Because I don't know. I feel like I watch a lot of rated R movies.
Yeah.
But
The
I s- I mean I
A24.
the A24. Oh no. But
Or do you
I
think
think
like is there a lack of content that's more family friendly, that's live action for like our contemporary times?
yeah, I mean I think in general the movies that are um the commercial ones that get more at commercial franchise cinemas get shown there are generally pretty violent. And I mean, I this is not, I don't have any like nothing to cite to back this claim up, but I feel like yeah, violence pretty much is not, it's not even a kind of smart violence. It's, I think, maybe very careless. Because in my sort of philosophy with representations of violence on screen is that if you choose to use write that in there, shoot that in there, that it has to really be addressed in terms of how violence plays a role in structuring people's psyches, society, etc., memory, like all these things. So I mean, but in terms of the violence in this particular movie, I think it was just a lot of slapstick, um, like comic relief on that one servant who just falls over a lot and things are like sort of whacking into him. And or like there's this one scene where the prince like walks over him, like as he's trying to like chase after Cinderella or something. I think he's like fallen over, which I think is pretty absurd. So it's pretty. I think that's like fine, negligible. Yeah. Um, how about you, Natalie? What do you think about this?
Yeah, the choreography, not just of the dances, but the characters and their acting was very cartoonish. It really reminded me of a cartoon, or I don't know. I thought that, again, I'm not the target audience. Maybe if I was um, like 7, I would think it was hilarious. But I felt like it was a little jarring to see people in real life move like cartoons, because in the animation classes I took, we learned these techniques to like squash and stretch, where literally like to exaggerate movements. The animators, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. The animators can literally stretch characters and make them to exaggerate that slapstick comedy, the physical comedy, and exaggerate their movements. And it's very artificial seeing that on a real human body. And again, with like cartoons, someone can fall off a ladder and they'll be fine because again, animation, squash, stretch, they're like it's fantasy, right? But I was I don't know. It was honestly a little uncomfortable to me to see the guy fall off the ladder, knowing in real life that's a real like actor, that's a man that can hurt himself. Um, but um, yeah, it gave off a very cartoonish vibe. And then I also think about violence in movies today in general. Well, yeah, first off, I'm sure there are TV movies and a lot of children's media that I'm just not, I don't watch because again, I'm not the target audience. Um, so I can't really speak to that because I don't know what children's media is like anymore. But I think, Stephen, I might disagree with you a little bit. I feel like violence in movies, I kind of I don't know. I don't want to I don't think this is solidified, but I almost feel like it's fair game because there's so much violence in real life and in this world. And people who are in like war times are forced to see the violence and forced to witness something so gruesome and horrific and traumatizing with no way to just turn off the film, to walk out of the theater, or to get a trigger warning beforehand. So I don't know if people can't just walk away from violence, like I feel like it's almost pointless to be so careful about what you show on screen, especially I mean again, I think all movies should have the goal of um portray or showing visuals that relate to the story that are for a purpose, not just like, oh, I'm making a movie and I'm going to film the floor for 10 minutes for no reason, or I'm going to film violence for no reason. I mean, I guess it's shock value might get people talking. I guess like I don't know. I just feel like there's so much violence on the news and in the world that how can we be like, okay, I draw the line at films. I don't know. Do you have a response to that, either Steven or Jeff?
Yeah, um, I think just generally that violence is just so careless, or that it's just handled with, it's just like a blasé thing. And when it comes to art, like movie as an art or like an artifice, like let's not forget that we are constructing these things. And so if as creators, why are we not being more careful, at least being more conscientious of uh, that artifice, like of creating it? Like I think, yeah, it's just so much violence is careless. Uh, and you can interpret that. I'm being very general and not saying anything specific, but I think you get what I mean.
In terms of like morals, and like I, a lot of the early Disney movies, there's clear morals. You could look at this version of Cinderella and believe in yourself, like have this kind of like positive attitude, use your imagination, try to think about what you want in life, or you know have these kind of meaningful connections with people. When you think about the movies you both watch, whether they're recently made this year or recent years, do you feel like movies these days have morals? If you want to go next, Natalie, if you have something on that.
Um, I feel like humans always try to make meaning. We're our brains are wired for seeing patterns and finding patterns. And so I guess at least for myself, always after a movie, I think about what did that mean, even if I get to the point of like, oh, the meaning of this movie is like there is no meaning. Like things just happen. It's chaos. But again, because I'm wired to look for patterns and look for meaning, I think for me personally, I always walk away from a movie with some ideas. I mean, not like, oh, this is exactly what the director intended or the point of the movie, but I personally always walk away having some thoughts of what it meant.
Yeah, I agree with Natalie. I personally have that relationship with movies as well, or just art in general. But I will say that, I mean, I believe that all art is ideologically not neutral. It's very, I'm also at a park, so if you hear teens exclaiming that's what's going on, or if something happens, my phone dies. Um, but I think, yeah, all art is not neutral ideologically speaking, but I will say that I am trying my best to have a diverse set of reading practices, like a diverse set of reading practices. So, like I was saying earlier, with the project with my mom, for example, that film could function very differently with how and who is viewing it and how they even come into that viewing experience. So I think, sorry, I don't remember the original question, but I'm trying to say that there are different ways that movies can function. Yeah.
Oh,
Steve,
okay. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, I was gonna ask Steven if usually do you think about morals in movies you watch like these days or
Yes.
okay.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's just I also understand that I am more privileged to have gone to college and also a public high school that was well funded in the art department that equipped me with like cultural capital and that allows me to sort of be more critical or just so I understand that the analytical tools that I have is not necessarily accessible or whatever, but I think anyone can be critical and be scholarly, right? Um, but I will say that, yeah, I think that as personally a person that makes art, that I want to be conscious about what I put out in the world. So of course, I am looking for personally movies that have sort of a particular criticality and approach to addressing themes like violence, like all of the isms, like class. So I'm always thinking about certain lenses to approach movies. So yeah, I do look for morals for sure.
Um, One thing regarding morals and this movie is I think um hmm, I'm like trying to get all these thoughts and turn them into coherent sentences, but I think there's some maybe more criticism, or Disney has had criticism for having pushing a moral, like pushing the moral of the story, very clear cut. And I think for the original Disney cartoons, the animated films, it was like people started to notice, like, okay, we're getting all these white people getting their happily ever after, like it just they get married, it's the end. And then people started to like question those the moral of the story, um especially for like Disney movies that really push that. um and it's I mean I like learned I think like this movie was revolutionary for its time. Brandy was called, the first Black Cinderella ever portrayed, or portrayed on TV. And, I think they took a risk there, and I could see in the movie, like, really emphasizing her imagination, her creativity. Whitney Houston, as the fairy godmother, kept saying, like, I can only do so much. The rest is up to you. And kind of how she stood up to her stepmother as well. She was like, why don't you see me at the ball? And I think that kind of had some nuanced layers too. Like, with Black people and Black women being excluded from, being represented as in the Disney Princess series, but also in real life in a lot of places. Um, But I think now there's sort of like how there's different waves of feminism. Uh, I think now we're kind of in a place where it's like that, like girl boss, like strong, independent woman was getting pushed too far. And, you know, I think that's why and again, like with this being revolutionary for like the race blind casting, I think people are I think that while this was revolutionary, and again, I don't know much about the new live action princess movies, but I think a lot of people criticize them for like lazy, like race blind casting, where it's like, okay, we have seen this before, and you're trying to capitalize off of diversity instead of adding more to the story and coming up with something new and interesting and important. You're just making these changes for financial reasons or to virtue signal. And kind of like likewise, like things like oscillating back and forth. Um, kind of back to what I was saying, where that like girl boss, like I do it myself. People are realizing, well, women can't always do it by themselves. Sometimes like it's nice to have a partner that helps you through life. Like that's not getting married isn't we shouldn't like shame people, not shame people, but you know, that's also it's equally valid. So that's what I thought in regards to morals and this version of Cinderella. I think this was like a pivotal moment for Disney. Um, and that's why I think things in this movie worked where they might not be working in like new iterations of live action animated movies.
Yeah, I agree with what Natalie has said, and I think that in terms of morals, I think that this movie is I would recommend it um for it's appropriate for younger audiences, children and family. And also before I forget, um I think a big part of what makes a good family movie is the enjoyability for the older people who are perhaps watching it. And I mean, I was entertained because we understand that we might not be the target audience, but there are things that make it funny, or we have our own, quips or whatever. But I think it's perfectly appropriate for kids. And I think in terms of its morals, yes, I think that everything that Jeff and Natalie has said, I agree with what happens in the movie in terms of um, dreaming, imagining herself in a different situation, and then having an adult figure or a figure in general that can cheer you on, and being able to have that very clearly defined is very important. And then with the construction of the movie, I think um, the race blind casting, I am sure it means a lot to people of color, especially young Black girls who can see someone that they can identify with, and just see on screen. I think like the movie industry has a lot of power, and there is some power to having an image up there. Um, and of course, my further critiques of this, I don't know what your next questions are, Jeff, but sort of I guess to segue into my critique of this casting decision, is the scene. Natalie know it's coming, but the scene where they have the glass slipper, right? And they need to try it on and find the real Cinderella. But my question was, why do they show a bunch of extras who are of all races trying this shoe on when the prince knows that he danced with a black woman, a black girl, right? So I feel like in the world of the movie, a lot of the question of race isn't brought up. Though to for me, I feel like because it's not brought up, it is I mean it's also just nice to just have interracial relationships and people aren't questioning that as a viable and legitimate configuration, you know? So on one hand, I understand that, but on the other hand, um, that scene sort of just to me maybe summarize its underlying ideology and or approach to race. Um, so yeah, that's tricky for me.
I guess. Oh, sorry, Jeff. I
I was
don't
gonna
want to.
I was gonna ask Steven if you thought would that particular scene that you described would have been better if there was like a bunch of black women that were going to try the slipper on instead of the diverse group that was trying to slipper on. Do you think with like the film's story logic would that have made more sense?
The story logic. I mean, I'm trying to imagine because I feel like I would just write that in. Like that makes sense to me. Um, yeah. I mean, I don't see anything that would work against with the internal logic. I don't know. But yeah, I think it would just been better if that was acknowledged that the protagonist is black. Like in the story, she is also black. Like that's the thing with film that is a visual medium for the most part. Um, I'm talking about the avant-garde blank films, but yeah, it is. Yeah, that's just part of the medium that it's visual. So I'm like, I don't know, you can't get away from it, I think. But it is tricky because that's just tricky. Natalie, I see a lot of emoting. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm like, um, hmm. I hmm, I have mixed feelings about this because I think the original's idea of I'm gonna find someone with this shoe that fits the right girl, and that's I mean, it's like, did she have like particularly like large feet or small feet? Like that is crazy. That's always been crazy to me, even in the original Cinderella. Like, what if someone happens to have the same shoe size? Like, what? And so it is fantastical, but I also think that it does a little bit, like what Steven said, undermine, the what like the kind of some I mean, it undermines. I like the that this movie again shows like you don't even question it. Like, what? How? Why is it not okay to have? Or like, why is it strange or weird? Or it doesn't need to be pointed out that the queen is black, the king is white, and the prince is Asian. Like, there's families like that, and that's a normal family. It shouldn't be like, oh, we need to explain why. It's no. Sometimes it just is, right? But I think moments like the shoe fitting could also undermine that by being like, okay, well, this is obviously fantasy because they're not right. Then it's like an artistic choice. Um, that, oh, we're not even going to see race, um versus like what Steven said, built into the story. And so moments like that do undermine because it's like it is so ridiculous. Like, why are you fitting this shoe on a white person when that I mean, or I don't know, a person in a bigger body when obviously that is not who you danced with. um what else? I took some notes. Oh, well, this is completely this is I had some notes, but it's on something that was said like 10 minutes ago. So,
We could move on to something else on your notes while you're looking at your notes.
well, Stephen mentioned how the movie had enjoyability for adults. And I think one thing that made me enjoy it was seeing big celebrities like Whoopi Goldberg and Whitney Houston in, kind of acting silly, or seeing how it's just like what's it, like rhetoric, like ethos, pathos, logos. I think ethos is the one where it's like if you see a celebrity, you like it. So that's why a lot of brands, it's like Samuel L. Jackson does Allstate. It's just we like seeing familiar faces. And I think this movie also being very pivotal is how it was a success, and it kind of generated like a lot, it was generative for more like TV specials. And I think it's really interesting that nowadays they're starting to not be TV actors and movie actors, whereas before there were more obscure actors that were just on TV. Now with streaming, you get like the biggest top A-list, like Leonardo DiCaprio starring in a TV show. And I do, I can kind of see it here, like this was made by Whitney Houston, versus like maybe another TV musical that would just have musical stars or TV actors. I don't really know how this was in the 90s, but and I also know for like animated movies, there used to be voice actors. Like you didn't really know their face. They weren't A-list celebrities, but you don't get like Angelina Jolie voicing Tigress in Kung Fu Panda. So I also, even though that was enjoyable for me to see Whoopi, I don't know. I do have mixed feelings about using such big stars all the time.
To speak to what made the film really, like, I think the film's strengths are the casting for sure. Though I will say just personally, because I'm just like culturally disconnected due to my upbringing and also just generationally disconnected, that some of these stars, like the star power, probably wasn't as effective on me personally. But I will say that one of the strengths were the choreographed numbers. I thought the um the scene where they're throwing a ball and he has to, the servant, the right hand man or something, is inviting people and spreading the news. I thought that scene was really strong, and the way that we get to see the town in action, I thought, and then that choreographed dance um sequence was also, that strength was also seen in the ballroom dance. I thought the comedy with like the way that it was speeding up, like the rhythm of that was amazing. I thought so yeah, for sure the dancing was a really strong aspect of it. Um so let's see, we talked about stars, dance.
The
Oh
music, the
yeah.
singing.
Yes, the big thing. So I know I said in the beginning that I thought the lyricism was like okay. Though I will say that my favorite part were the two sisters, who were spying on Cinderella and the prince in the courtyard or little balcony, and they were like, "Who is she?" I think their chemistry was amazing. I thought those two like were amazing actors, and that their anytime they were on screen and their dialogue and their singing, I thought was just amazing, really entertaining. Um yeah.
We have a little bit of time. Did you have any other notes or thoughts, Natalie? I have a couple more things to bring up, but I'll let you take it from here for now.
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. But Jeff, no, let's go through your questions.
With you both being artists and really into film, studying film, in regards to your own creative projects or the way you approach, artistic endeavors, how do you approach it with keeping in mind, like, I want to make something that like could potentially make money, but it's also artistic and it's like something, I can like put some of my own honesty in or some of my own like inner life in or my perspective. How do you like juggle those elements for your own creative projects?
Well, that question is always on my mind. Um, and I know for my painting practice, um, there's works that sell and works that don't, especially when you're not like a big name and you can sell anything because it's a Jeff Koons, you know? Um, what I'm really hoping for is, I don't know, right now, like there's some projects that honestly really, and I'm learning like if your heart's not in it, but it makes money, but it's just not something that inspires me. It's not sustainable. It's really difficult to make art, and if the passion's not there, it's really really hard to keep that up. And like also what money, for the amount of labor that goes into like an oil painting and the hours and the cost of materials, I would have to sell it for a price that is not, because again, I'm a small artist. It's not going to be worth it. Um, so I'm trying to figure out ways to make prints of paintings so that the art is more accessible. People can buy a cheaper print, and then I get to keep the original. Um, but really, after I finish like a few projects, which I like know, I'm like, okay, like this is a great opportunity for me. This makes money. It's a good commission. Like I'll do it. I mean, I've been working on something for like 4 months just because I'm just not inspired. But I'm really hoping that the part-time jobs I'm taking up right now will allow me to feel more secure financially. And then I can go back to making things that I do like that are sustainable. Steven?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I wanted to also say that Natalie, there was something that I just couldn't say, and Natalie like expounded upon it really well like earlier. So that was good. Thank you. And then so
Mind
I
sharing
feel
what
like
that was?
I don't what?
Well, you said that I said something.
Yeah, like earlier, I just wanted to say thanks because
What,
I think
what, what,
yeah,
what was
no,
the thing that I said?
something about like I just didn't know how to say something and you did it. So anyways, but I think no, I totally agree with you, and I'm trying to keep. There's so many things you can say about this, but I think as a smaller artist, like an indie independent artist, who hasn't replaced their heart with like a commercial heart, a shiny one, um, I think yes, for sustainability sake, that your vision, your point of view must come before the market pressure or what is marketable for a smaller artist. Um, I can see that maybe if you are more successful, um, the money can really be a driving factor for you to continue. But as a smaller artist, um, I would assume, and I think, yeah, it's your passion and your um the desire to express yourself and communicate your point of view and your inner consciousness and externalize it. And then for me, I simply just ignore this question entirely because I'm not driven by I don't want to make money, or that's not my goal and I don't think I am marketable. Like I don't have anything to sell. So um my method is I usually work intuitively to sort of externalize all of my biases and my subconscious uh machinations, whatever they're doing. Um so I just let that externalize, and then I can step back and then activate sort of my more critique um editing stage. And editing is an interesting um shorthand for a lot of things, but for me, I think it's the conscious coming in to edit the subconscious things and really refine what I want to say, and think about how it will be received. Um, so yeah, I work intuitively, and then I push push it through a round of like multiple rounds of revision. Um, and I don't think about really selling it because yeah, it's just not commodifiable. But oh yeah, and then my last thing I wanted to say was how I view money, and I guess as an artist, money is just the fuel to keep it going. Um, like what did Patti Smith say? She has this like old interview where she's saying that whenever she can, she'll give money to like an artist because when she was really broke and up and coming, that money sustained her, right? And when she couldn't continue, she would steal resources. Um, so yeah, money is the stuff that if you like really appreciate this and you want it to continue, then that's a resource that you put in the system to let it proliferate, you know? Yeah.
Back to just to kind of circle back and we could finish soon. Um, I'm always up for talking longer, but we could see how it goes. Um, I could start with you, Natalie. When you were growing up, could you talk about some of the films that you felt like you learned from as a kid when you were growing up over those kind of early years or into like early adulthood? Especially movies that you may have like you felt like you learned something from them.
I mean, to be honest, I think, of course, I grew up watching movies, and my dad is a super movie fan. He would get the weirdest, um, like, not, I mean, like John Waters movies and be like, okay, family movie night. So we were watching a lot of movies as a family together. And I think always I don't walk away being like, I learned something and I'm going to change how I act. Um, and because this has been a lesson, but definitely I think it has a subconscious impact. Definitely growing up, um, I was into the Disney movies, and I still, to this day, I feel like hold a lot of those still like fantasies of like, oh, I mean, really honest, again, I grew up watching Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, 100%, Aladdin. I like animated movies a lot. And I still have the dream of like, oh, I'll meet my Prince Charming and we'll get married happily ever after. Um, I mean, again, not specific lessons, but I watched like all the Pixar movies growing up, um, like classic Disney, like 80s, like Ariel, Beauty and the Beast. Um, then live action, Lord of the Rings. I loved Lord of the Rings, which was kind of an outlier. So I'm not super into fantasy movies, but I love Lord of the Rings, and a few musicals too, like Phantom of the Opera is what I grew up on when I was a little kid.
Steven, did you want to weigh in or have any thoughts about that? Like films you watched growing up that you were glad that you watched?
Oh, um, you see, the thing is, I actually did not watch a lot of films. I did watch like Cars and Aladdin, Beauty and Beast, Snow White, Cinderella, all of these things, but I think I watched them when I was really young and I didn't really remember them, so it's not in my conscious memory that I can access. But I will say okay, I have two recommendations. The first one is actually one that I forgot the title of, but I saw it like 2 years ago. But it's an animated like I think it's like watercolor, but it's a bear that is and a mouse, I think. Like it's told from the perspective of mice, and this mouse or this super tiny creature befriends a bear, and they're like I don't know if does this ring any bells for anyone? It's I can find it. It's like I have it logged on my letterboxd, but it's like Cecil. It's like there are two names, like Cecil and or something. It's not Cecil, but um I watched that
Is it
at it was
Ernest?
programmed.
Is it Ernest and
Ernest?
Yes, Ernest and
Celestine.
Celestine?
yes, Celestine and Ernest and Celestine. That is a movie that like I straight up just cried. Oh my God, it's such a good movie. I highly recommend that one about difference. Like yeah, they I think it's a movie about difference, acceptance, finding beauty in people that are different from you, things like that. And then it's like about their societal prejudice as well. Um, and then from my memory, the movie that moved me the most was Kiki's Delivery Service, the Studio Ghibli movie, I believe. And I did watch that as a kid, and yeah, I mean, a movie that is about believing yourself, coming of age, the necessary like independence and uh, just having your own space to figure things out as a young adolescent. I think that's a good moral, and I do believe in that. Um, and there's a lot of failure and like tears, like in the movie, that she learns from the protagonist Kiki. So yeah, I would recommend that one. That's probably the most touching for me as a kid. Yeah.
Do you both find that it's still enjoyable to watch movies with your families, like the older relatives, younger relatives, whether it's around the holidays or outside of the holidays?
Um, yeah, I would say so. My family and I, we love to like rewatch The Lord of the Rings. That's like our family movie. I saw it when I was like probably still in elementary school, and we watch it almost every year, the whole trilogy. Um, of course it depends though. There's that meme everyone knows of like, oh, a sex scene comes on and you have to like hold very still because you're sitting on the sofa next to your parents. And I did see Poor Things in theaters on Christmas with my whole family, and that is just so not the movie to watch with your family. I really don't recommend that. And I don't know, it's interesting though, where I think part of the reason why, look, I'm a hater, and this is my I don't know what's it called when you hot take. This is my hot take, but I didn't enjoy the movie Poor Things. I really didn't like the movie, and I think a huge reason why was because I was like, sitting in these like tight theater seats right next to like mom and dad, and I was like, oh, like why is there so much sex in this movie? So of course I think audience and who you watch with definitely impacts my enjoyment of a movie, but I still do occasionally, very occasionally, watch a movie with my family, and I like it.
And then for me, I never had the relationship where I grew up watching movies with my parents. Like that's just something we didn't do. We had they purchased like VHS tapes for us, and so like my siblings and I would just like watch it on our own. So they would be like at work or something. I don't think we ever went to like a movie theater. So the first time I went to the movies was like I was in sixth grade or seventh grade, and um, well, I guess you can sort of actually pinpoint it to a year because I saw Insidious 2 in theaters with and that's when my friend's mom uh decided to organize and she was able to get us in. Um, but but for now, yeah, I do watch movies with my parents because thankfully, Netflix, they have a lot of Mandarin subtitles for my mom to understand what's happening, like literally what's happening. Otherwise, when I put something on, she will watch if it's like visually appealing to her. Um, so yeah, she's not reading for plot per se, but more of like aesthetic and beauty, what that means to her. Um, and then, or if I want to sort of curate an experience, I will put a movie on and be like, Mom, look at this. And what a beautiful segue because I showed my mom Poor Things and I just like watched it with her. And I see Jeff is like smiling, so maybe he's seen it, but yeah, a lot of the sex scenes, a lot of sex. There's like frontal nudity at points and just genuinely bizarre. But my family is bizarre, so that was great. Perfect selection, and my mom liked it because we're cuckoo. But yeah, I do. Looking forward, yeah. I hope that I can watch more movies with them.
You brought up, I think, Stephen, like certain movies made you cry. Do you feel like is that an experience? I often wonder if people still cry at certain films, whether they're new releases or because that is, and I try to think of like other moments, maybe during a concert or a play. Um, yeah, I don't, do you both have any thoughts about that? Crying from art, the experience of art, it could be a painting even.
Um, even though I'm a painter, I can't remember a time that I cried in front of a painting, but I have cried in front of photographs. I went to, I think it was like a school trip to one of like the Smithsonian Washington D.C. museums, and there's a photography series, and I remember like bawling. Um, I I think one thing that gets me to cry in movies is the passage of time when something happens and it feels like the scope is like so long. I don't know, it gets me like thinking about I don't know, it gets me kind of like existential and thinking about oh, something happening over a lifetime. I guess maybe I think about that because we also just saw the Notebook recently, and I didn't think I was gonna cry, but I ended up crying at the end. Again, I think more so just reflecting on my life, and I think for any movie, like the time when it has to do with time and something sad that happened over many years, that gets me. But also just you know, empathizing with the characters on screen when they're crying, when they're sad. Um, I mean, I love it when a movie makes me cry. It's so fun. I cry for fun. Um, and I love it when a movie can get you to, these like involuntary reactions, whether it be tears or laughter. That's amazing. So yeah, I still cry and I love it. I love it when that happens.
It's rare for me Um, to
You cried
cry.
during Shrek 1.
Okay. Here's what I will say about crying to Shrek is that I can be very jaded and like very cynical about movies specifically. So when I am confronted with something that disarms me with just genuine, like maybe it's like a tropish, but they do it well. Or I mean for Shrek, I was disarmed and I was like moved by it, so I cried and I like sobbed really violently during the middle of it. But it is rare for me to cry now. Maybe because I'm maybe a little bit too analytical and removing myself emotionally. But in recent memory, Poor Things, I teared up. This movie called Fallen Leaves, I teared up. Um, but the most memorable, almost cry, was the movie Memoria with what's her name? She was in Problemista. Oh wait, Problemista. That's one where I almost cried. Tilda Swinton in Memoria. That one was a movie that I think about because for that particular movie, the distribution of it, the director wanted, and I'm sure you know about this, Jeff, maybe, that he wanted the movie to be only screened like very specifically like a tour, like a music tour where each city could show it for a little bit and then it'll move on and you will like miss it. So the point of it is to make it really exclusive. So it's really important to that you like be there with the audience. And I think as a philosophy, like I think going to the movies and crying together is what makes it special. Like the ability to feel together in a dark room is one of the magic elements of movies and why people should continue going out to like physical spaces to watch with other people. And that's not to like poop on streaming like privately at your house.
Yeah, it's a good point. There's so many ways to experience films. Um, I think any filmmaker would hope that people can see it in a theater or some kind of a venue. Um, and I did catch Memoria in the theaters when it came out, and especially the sound design. I always notice seeing a movie in the theater and the music, and everything's just so much bigger, which is nice. Um, any final thoughts before we go? I don't want to keep you both too long tonight. Did you have anything from your notes or that we didn't get to discuss from Cinderella, or anything connected to family movies that you want to mention
What's your favorite film, Jeff?
in terms of family movies or just
In
overall?
general.
I really like, I think the movie I've seen the most in the theater um, is a movie by Andrei Tarkovsky called Stalker. It's like a kind of a road movie.
Wait, is it just people, like walking? It's like
Natalie, I think you saw it with me,
I
Natalie, right?
yeah, I think that was one of our very first movie club movies where wait, it's just like if the it follows different people. There's no protagonist. It's like goes from person to person, many different lives, right?
It's like this
Mm.
guy is the guide for these other people, and he takes them into this zone where there's supposed
Oh.
to be a room where like this room can grant your wishes.
Oh, no. Okay, wait. So, okay. Then I was thinking of another one because Steven, remember in the movie club, there was like a camera that
Oh,
like followed.
Slacker
That was fun.
by
Okay, but we
Linklater.
did see Stalker. But we did see
Oh
Stalker
yes,
in
we did.
theaters. In
Stalker,
theaters.
yes, we saw it at the Gene Siskel in Chicago.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Stalker with
It was Russian,
the
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. Um, wait, what we were talking about? Oh yeah, your favorite movie.
That's
Or
one of
you've
my
seen it a lot.
favorites. I've
Yeah.
seen that one in the theater the most, especially over the last couple years. Like it's really, I've seen it at the Roxy in San Francisco a few
Mhm.
times, and like it's always like a packed theater, and the sound design and just the cinematography, like the way there's like very slow camera movements and like these long takes that are like intricately choreographed. I love his use of the camera, the way he just moves the camera. But I think the story in Stalker is like maybe more interesting than some of his other movies because it deals with like there was this kind of, accident, and then there's this area where it's like off limits to people and no one's supposed to go in there, and it's like fenced and stuff, but this guy knows how to sneak in there and bring people in, and then there's a room that is supposed to grant your wishes. So he takes these people to the room, but like it's like a journey getting to the room. Yeah, that one stays with me. I'll say Wizard of Oz, seeing it as a kid, even syncing it up to the Dark Side of the Moon, the Pink Floyd album, with a friend of mine, and like back in like my school days, that was like a cool experience to do. I've seen that one a lot over the years. Um, yeah, appreciate your time, and thank you for your thoughts, and was really cool to talk to you both. I appreciate hearing your thoughts and getting into it. So I'll let you enjoy your evenings.
Yeah, one more thing before I go. I'm gonna plug my Instagram
Oh
at
yeah, and if you want, go ahead.
ntjengng.art.
And I
Follow.
can put I'll put some of it in the description of the video too. Just send me whatever you want me to put in the like description. I can put it in there.
Hmm. My last thing is I just like that Cinderella also is about like her choosing her family. Like if she's not happy with her stepmother, then she has the autonomy and ability to find someone else that can provide that care. And um yeah, I think that's a great moral. That was like something I should have said like a long time ago. But thank you for speaking with me, Jeff and Natalie.
It was
Thank
awesome. Have a good night.